Hi, this is PJ from the Bee's Knees podcast. I have a terrific conversation for you today. It's my conversation with Michelle, who had a fractured patella on the Upper East Side of New York City, pushing a baby stroller, if you can believe that, and how she struggled to fix that problem and ended up solving it eventually. It's a great chat. She's a neat person. I was delighted to spend, an hour with her. There's a lot to learn from this conversation, from her experiences. So, without any more to say, let's listen to my conversation with Michelle about knee surgery and recovery.
Welcome to The Bee's Knees, a podcast full of articles, interviews, clinical studies, and advice about knee surgery, physical therapy, and life after knee surgery.
Hi, this is PJ Ewing. I am here, your host of the Bee's Knees podcast. Really excited to be on the phone with Michelle in New York City. Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Hi, PJ. Good. How are you? I think not too far away from each other.
We are not. No, I'm in Lower Manhattan and you're on the Upper East Side, and I hear sirens in the background.
Yes, even though the windows are closed, you still faintly can hear them.
There is no way in this city, I know from lots of experience, to find quiet. Literally impossible.
No, especially not with a baby running around too, but he's out right now, so he's at the park.
Oh, okay, got it. Well, the baby is part of the reason that we're on the phone, I think, because that was at least a little bit in terms of what you were doing when you fell and how you hurt yourself and all that. So let's not belabor that too much. Let's get right into it. Tell us what happened to you and when it happened, and then let's talk about how you've sort of found solutions to this problem.
Yeah, of course. So I have a now almost 14-month-old baby boy named Mason. He's the light of my life. And I had elected to become a stay-at-home mom after the company that I was with folded while I was on maternity leave. And I had a quick chat, well, not really a quick chat, but a lovely discussion with my husband when we discussed childcare and really my desire to be with the baby for the first year of his life at least. So made it to almost 9 months, and the day before he turned 9 months, we were returning home from a gym class that we frequent once or twice a week, and I was probably a stone throws away from my apartment, and I tripped over an uneven utility grate, and because I had the stroller, I was not able to break my fall, and thank God the baby was fine. He was in the stroller and not harmed in any sort of way. I fell directly on the following utility grate, so it was like a double utility grate, and PJ, you can jump in and talk a little bit about, or explaining what a utility grate is for anyone who's not familiar with those. But because I fell at a 90-degree angle, I broke it instantly. And I didn't realize that I broke it at all.
Right.
You fall, you think you get back up. You're like, oh crap, that hurt. Like the initial shock was there, so I didn't really feel pain or anything. And when I went to get up, I looked down and my bone was basically out of socket.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it wasn't
screams for help.
It wasn't like, oh my God, pain. It was a little bit shock, and when you looked at it, it became evident that this was
right. Then I realized, okay, now I'm in trouble. So I was thankfully very close to my apartment. The doorman came running out, grabbed the baby, and called 911. And I sat there for a good 40 minutes being told not to move, breathe, stay with us, keep your eyes open, pay attention, asking me different questions like, oh, what day is it? What's your favorite color? Just to keep me sane and with it. I went to a hospital. I'm 6.5 or 7 blocks from New York Presbyterian, and that was where I was sent to. And immediately they sent me in for an x-ray, and I know that you're not supposed to let the person know if it's broken or not till you met with the doctor, but I told the technician, I said, good or bad? And he said, you got a boo-boo. And I said, okay, it's broken. And he just nodded. And my husband was already at the hospital when I came out, and I just looked at him and he just knew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is all happened. You were literally, it's this winter time this happened, right? It was cold while you were out there?
It was early November. Yeah, it was early November.
Okay. And you were outside this whole time while you were on the phone with 911? Is that how that worked?
Yeah, it was a good 40 minutes before they got there, which felt like eternity.
And you just sat there on the phone with them. They came, got you to the hospital, X-ray. It was pretty evident, and there you were. So what was the expectation? What did the surgeon have to say about what happens next once it's diagnosed? It's broken.
Well, they actually, so it was two additional surgeons that came to see me from a different hospital, not affiliated with New York Presbyterian, because they didn't
Hmm.
have an orthopedic staff there. And they were carrying a brace, so I was like, okay, well, it's not broken, or I don't need surgery. And the surgeon looked at me and he was like, oh no, you need surgery. I was like, okay, well, why don't you admit me tonight and then we can do it tomorrow? Like, I was coming up with a game plan for them,
Hmm.
and they were insistent on the fact that this wasn't an emergency, that I could go home. And I just kept pleading to them, like, I have a baby, I need to get back on my feet. If it's broken, I need to have the surgery. And they essentially sent me home with crutches. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 narcotic pills to get me through until I met with a surgeon. And then from there, was on my own.
Wow. So that's a little disappointing right there. You're not getting a lot of guidance. It seems like
Right.
it's between two hospitals a little bit, but then you ended up following up the next day, was it? And then had that meeting to determine it was broken?
No, no, I determined that it was broken while I was in the hospital already.
Okay,
So they
got it.
knew that it was broken, but they gave me just a brace to keep it, I guess, essentially
Okay.
locked straight so that I wasn't able to bend it before I was able to meet with the surgeon. I didn't have the actual surgery until a week later.
Okay. So what was that week like? You were just immobilized the whole time?
Totally, just really in bed, very reliant on my husband, who's been the best nurse and punching bag throughout this entire experience. Just made sure to, really jump in and do everything that I need to do as far as icing, taking care of the baby, especially on the weekends when we had that time together. Just really robbed of that, time together. Um, but I accepted that this is what had happened, and what do we do from here? I immediately thought, okay, well, HSS, why would I not go to them? And unbeknownst to me, they just did not participate with my insurance. So I
I
took
see.
to, an Upper East Side moms group and just posted, in short, what had happened, what I was looking for. And a girl had reached out to me, and she actually had a very similar injury, not done in the same way. And she referred me to her surgeon, and I saw him. He was able to see me 2 days later.
Was this a transverse fracture right across?
Yes, it
Okay.
was split in right across in 2 or 3 different places, like a biscuit.
Hmm. Wow. Wow. Okay, so you sort out the surgeon. You know you have to have surgery. It takes about a week to get there, and then you have the surgery. And this involved wires and screws as well.
Well, initially, when he put up the X-ray, his first words out of his mouth were, "Okay, yeah, this is a bad break." And I just remember that so clearly. And then I remember getting dizzy, and then them coming in and giving me different snacks and sorts, because he immediately went into, okay, well, we can fix this, but it's going to entail possibly some screws, some wires, and a metal plate. And when I heard that, I kind of stopped listening and
Wow.
started fading out. And I just was starting to panic at that point, especially when he was saying that I was 6 months to a year, really leaning closer towards that year. And I just was in total panic mode at that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Um, okay, so it becomes more. It's a story. Michelle gets worse and worse, right, as you're going here. It's what a horrible thing to have happen. I mean, out of the blue, right? I mean, life is
Right.
great, and then
I mean,
boom.
it wasn't like I was skiing Aspen and I could tell people, oh yeah, I fractured my patella, I broke my, which is what the injury was, the broken kneecap. I don't know why it's called a fracture. It's broken. I think that's
Right.
confusing to a lot of people, including myself. I wasn't skiing. I wasn't doing anything fun. I was just going about my daily life, taking the baby home for his nap, and that's unfortunately what had happened. And I think the worst part is that the accident or injury, if whatever you want to call it, did happen so close to home, so I have to keep, walking past that location of where it happened. It's not like it happened in another part of the city. It's very close to home, and it's always in the forefront of my mind. And I kept trying to rack my brain, thinking like, why did this happen? What's the lesson in this? Like, okay, like what am I supposed to learn from this experience? And what's the positive that's going to come out of it?
Hmm. I have he shall remain nameless, but a patient that we worked with a couple of years ago in New Jersey,
Hmm.
and he hurt his ACL. But he
Right.
hurt his ACL in those children's ball bins, the ball court, where you have all the little colored balls and you're playing, all the little kids. Well, he was he was in one of those with kids, playing, and that's how he hurt himself. So we had to make up a story and call it a soccer accident because he was so
Yeah.
mad that it was, it wasn't skiing in Aspen. It was literally in a
No,
little
it
kid's
wasn't
thing,
doing anything fun and adventurous. And then people
Right.
are just like, well, why? How did you trip over utility grade, or what's utility grade? And I was just like, you know what? I can't. I don't
No.
need to explain myself to anyone.
So what was the date of the actual surgery?
And November 13th.
11/13. Okay. And you're home from surgery. What is the prognosis? What's the
No,
expectation that you have?
I have a history of pain management issues. I've
Okay.
had two prior abdominal surgeries related to Crohn's disease, not related to this at all. So I knew from the start that I needed to be admitted and was a strong component of that and campaigned for that. And the surgeon agreed. He said, absolutely. So I actually spent 5 days in the hospital post the operation. And I
Okay.
can tell you that I've never experienced pain like that in my life. It was just uncontrollable.
And they were giving you the big stuff, the opioids, the oxy.
Cocktails, cocktails of medications, trying different things, different combinations, seeing what works, seeing what didn't. And the only thing that was really doing was knocking me out. So, sure, I would find a short-term relief if I was sleeping through the pain, but when I would wake up, it would come right back.
Mm. Wow. 5 not happy days in a place that nobody really wants to spend a lot of time in, the hospital. Um,
Exactly.
wow. Okay. So now we're getting toward 18th, 19th of November. You get home at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And what was it like then? It was just, did you have the pain under control? Did they get it right, or did it take some more time?
No, they definitely did not get it right. And I don't think it was their fault at all. It was just my body, I think, really either being resistant to what it was being offered,
Hmm.
and not wanting to, I don't know, deal with that pain, not knowing how to overcome that.
And you're still trying to manage Mason, I guess, during some of this time as well, right?
Well, I did actually have to hire a nanny, which was the most devastating part, is just being robbed of that time with the baby.
Mm,
Going from being with him 24/7 to having the nanny bring him in for visits, in between naps or things that, worked around his schedule. So that was
right.
very tough for me, but we did have to hire help. And then my husband, of course, when the nanny wasn't here, was, taking over with the walks and the diaper changes, which he's always done before. It's just we were doing these things as a family, and it was a solo mission for him.
Having little kids, not as little as Mason, but my little Adelaide and a slightly older Finn, yeah, today's dad has to do a lot of that stuff.
They
Our
do,
parents,
but
my
but I
parents
but I
didn't,
think
but
I think that should be expected. I think that dads
it
should
is.
help. I think that,
Yeah,
that's time that they should enjoy with their child, regardless.
100% agree. It's normal. I mean, I learned that with my oldest, who's now 19. But
Right.
yeah, it was normal then, and a lot of time has gone by, and it's just part of what you do. And
Of
I
course.
interact with dads all the time, from the various schools and programs and stuff, and it's what you do. It's what you do. Okay, so well, what are you're immobilized for many, many weeks at this point, right? It's 4, 5, 6 weeks that you're in a sort of a straight position with that knee,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was locked straight for a good 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8.
I actually had some wound healing issues, so I was delayed with starting physical therapy because once they removed the actual stitches, there was an area that reopened.
Okay, got it.
So I had to do
Uh,
some wet to
yeah.
dry, I think they had called that, while at home.
Mhm. So, just stepping back for just a second, it should be no surprise to any of us, anyone, that, starting to bend one's knee after 8 weeks plus of immobilization, being in a straight position is a challenge. I mean, I know everyone expected it. I'm sure your PT people, the surgeon, it's just, yeah, we're going to have to bend that knee eventually when your wound has healed and when you're seeing the bone heal. And it has you have all kinds of time for the knee to get really comfortable at 0 degrees straight out and not want to go anywhere from there. So
Right, and I
you
think
were,
that was the confusing part for the doctors as
hmm,
well as the physical therapist that I saw, because I did have that perfect extension, and they had always commented, well, we don't generally see this where people have that extension and then they have flexion issues. So I was like, okay, well, like, what's wrong with me and why is my body doing this? Like, why
hmm,
am I able to completely extend but the flexing is such a hard time? Like, is it actually mental, or am I not capable of doing it at this point?
hmm.
It was like
So
a
there
constant battle between the two.
there you were, in PT 8 weeks later. Is that a local facility that you were
It,
attending?
it was.
Yeah.
I went through 3 or 4 different locations before I finally found a location that I felt suited best for me. And to each their own. Some people
Right.
do want that one-on-one time, which is what I felt that I needed. Some people are okay with someone just handing them that green strap and saying, okay, do this exercise, do that exercise. But for me, I wanted someone who was going to work with me, not just, put me in the corner and say, get on the bike or do this exercise or that exercise. Like, essentially you're paying that copay. You want that one-on-one time. And if I'm not going to get that, then very quickly I learned that I need to go somewhere else. I think that the most important lesson through all of this is that you always have to take your health into your own hands, regardless if that's, telling the doctor, I found this machine or that machine, or, I'm going to try a natural way to heal versus being on heavy narcotics. I think that should always be your choice. And I think that you always have to be a champion for your own health.
It's coming through loud and clear, Michelle, from you. I mean, anyone listening, me listening, understanding your story in more depth, get that you as a person are going to take charge of this situation. It's your nature, and I think that has done you such a good service along the way, because people do get pushed around a lot and they sort of find themselves surprisingly in trouble, in weeks and weeks or months later after a surgery or an injury. And they could have managed it a lot better if they had taken the bull by the horns or whatever. And you are clearly the kind of person who will do that, and that's to your credit.
Exactly. Thank you.
But yeah, well, I mean,
Maybe to my
it,
detriment also, but
well, I mean, I
it
guess I,
worked
I
out.
am a little curious about one thing, and that is, what was, you mentioned it a little bit, put you in the corner, go do the exercises, talk to you later, but what was the determining factor on clinics that were not going to suit you and those that were? Was it simply level of attentiveness, or what was, why did you
I
choose
think
the one you
it was
chose?
attentiveness. I think it was technique. I think it was more of just connection that you had with the therapist. For me, I personally, if someone's saying, okay, well, breathe in, close your eyes, and try to think about, a time where you're on vacation or a time where you were happy, or like just trying to like completely, I, I don't want to say like mind f you. You can fill in the blank, but
Mm,
yeah, that's really what they were trying to do. And for me, that just wouldn't work. If someone was trying to forcefully bend my leg a certain way or my knee a certain way, I would push back. So rather than working with them, I was working against them. And that's really what I was finding at the various places that I went to. And then I did find someone who just had a completely different technique, and that was working for me. But unfortunately, it was too late at that point because the scar tissue had set in. And I found out that I'm someone that actually grows scar tissue and amasses that very quickly. So the window of what I had between having the surgery, being locked straight for X amount of time, and then really hitting the ground hard and pushing myself through that physical therapy was really coming to a close, and really had closed at that point. And that became
yeah.
very clear and apparent when I was going back for my post-op visits, and the surgeon I had two different surgeries, but we'll get into that soon. just really seemed disappointed with my progress. And I wasn't reaching, I guess, the goals that he had expected me to achieve. I had a flexion, I think originally after the first post-op visit, I think maybe 25 or 30. And then it was just painfully that, like, I was teetering at like 40 or 45 when I went back for the second time. And really come mid to early December is when he kept throwing out the terms MUA. And for him, I think he was trying to scare tactic me into pushing myself harder through that physical therapy so that, I didn't have to have that dreaded MUA. But that didn't work for me. And I had in my head, I'm not going to do that. I don't care what he says. I'll give myself the more time. I'll push through that scar tissue. So I even started doing physical therapy on the weekends. So not only was I doing it 3 times a week, I took on physical therapy. I found a location that was open on Saturdays. They would either come to my home or I would go to them. So the time that I did have with the baby and did have with my husband, I was now sacrificing that because I needed to, again, take my health into my own hands and force my way through that. But it really came down to that it wasn't bending. It didn't matter what technique I was using. If I was in the pool, pushing through it, if I was doing different breathing techniques, it wasn't working. And then it just came down to I needed to start having that conversation of, it's really time that we talk about the MUA seriously, that this is no longer a threat. This is something that is really the only option.
So when was that moment where you're like, okay, it's not working? About when was that? Was that mid-December or a little bit later than that?
It was mid-December, then on early January, and then became a very, very serious discussion, I want to say mid-January. And my fear was that, I'm going to have the surgery. I'm going to miss out on my son's first birthday. I can't do that. I need to either do it now and have that time to heal so that in the next, let's say 2.5 weeks, I'll be more mobile than I would be, or I need to just delay it and do it after his birthday.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how did you navigate that?
Neither of which were good options.
Yeah.
The discussion was to do it after the birthday.
Okay. So then, and you're saying it's a manipulation under anesthesia and
Correct.
arthroscopy as well?
Yes, because it was at the point where the scar tissue had built up that it was no longer just the option of doing manipulation under anesthesia.
Right.
We also had to go in and cut out the scar tissue.
Yeah. And that's, this is all makes great sense to me. Remember, I am not a physical therapist. I'm not really a medical person, a clinician, but I've been around this space for so long, and I've heard the stories and worked with patients through our physical therapy people, et cetera, that it is, it's very obvious to me that this all makes sense. When you get to week 10, week 12, everybody's nervous about a manipulation. Sometimes you can squeak one in, week 8, 9, and then if it doesn't work, you can do a second manipulation. But if you wait so long just because of circumstance, right, you don't, that window is very small that you can do the MUA, and the next step is arthroscopy / MUA, and you had to
Correct.
really jump right to that stage just because of what was going on. And so what was the date of that procedure then?
So I decided, I'm going to take 30 minutes out of my day. I'm going to just call multiple different surgeons within HSS. There's got to be someone that does accept my insurance. Lo and behold,
Gotcha.
The 5th person that I contacted did accept my insurance, understood that this was a time-sensitive matter, and squeezed me in for an appointment. And I had the surgery on February 26th.
Feb 26. Okay. And it just for
the interesting part is that he actually didn't agree with the original surgeon and felt that I needed more time and that my knee was not ready to do the manipulation yet, and that I did risk the the risk of breaking and refracturing it. So he felt that absolutely not, you cannot do it now. You need to wait an additional 2-3 weeks. The patella still has to heal more. It still has to bind more. So I think that was the scariest part, was that the previous surgeon, and the original surgeon would have done the surgery even prior to my son's birthday if I was like, okay, yes, let's do it.
Right.
And I would have potentially rebroken it and completely started over again versus listening to my gut and again taking my health into my own hands, realizing that, let me see a different surgeon. Maybe they have a different tactic. Maybe there's a different type of surgery. Maybe I don't have to do MUA. Maybe I don't know what I was thinking. I knew that I needed to have someone else look me in the eyes and say, this is really your only option and this is why.
If anyone listening to this has been listening to a few of the episodes, within the last 4 weeks or 5, we had Lois on the phone now doing this same conversation that we're having, Michelle, and she's on Staten Island, coincidentally locally, and she went for the manipulation under anesthesia and they broke her patellar tendon. And she is now 6 weeks post MUA, squeaking her way back into PT relatively soon. We'll get the machine back to her way post the MUA. So your care in making this decision and sort of good fortune, I guess, is palpable, because I've just gone through this and we're still going through it with Lois, who, the MUA did indeed hurt her. And I would point out, as I did on that call or that podcast, that these are, small percentages. I mean, people have manipulations of under anesthesia every day, all the time, but it does have risks, and that's why these surgeons have opinions on timelines and when they're willing to do them and when they really aren't, because they are afraid. They want to. There you are under anesthesia. They want to bend you. Even without an arthroscopy, they want to bend you, break through that scar tissue. But if they push too hard, now we're talking about doing some damage, and that's the biggest fear, is that they're causing a problem. Like the old oath. Are you causing harm? And in some cases, in an MUA, you can. So interesting. So February 26th, both arthroscopy and manipulation under anesthesia. And I guess one more question about where you are in time. What was your bending ability right before that procedure?
I want to say I maybe got to 55, if that. Like I was in bad shape. Like it was just totally locked up.
So you're one of the awesome moms on the Upper East Side, the one who's just struggling to get around, having birthday parties for Mason and doing all this stuff. But you must have had all your friends like coming to your aid, I have to believe.
Yeah, for sure. I think that it was just a lot of confusion on their part, because they have always seen me mobile and jumping around and sitting Indian style in the classes and being very active, and really going from that to stuck, literally and figuratively. I mean, granted, I think the only thing working in my favor mentally was that it was winter, and it was like, okay, well, I don't really want to be outside anyway, but I'm one of those people that I enjoy being outside. I don't complain when it's cold out. I like the fresh air. Being stuck in the apartment or really only leaving to go to physical therapy was just horrible.
Wow. Yeah, well, I mean, you just have to make your way through it. Okay, so 55 is the best. You have the procedure. How long were you, in the hospital during that second procedure?
2 days.
2 days. You get home, and at that point,
prior to that, sorry to interject, prior to that, I had met extensively with their pain management team, so that they were able to manage my expectations, and they knew going forward, okay, she's had history, and they've previously put her on X, Y, and Z drug. Let's try this instead. And just having that game plan ahead of schedule worked definitely to my favor, because they knew when I woke up from the anesthesia, this is what our next steps were going to be.
How did it work?
Tremendously. I mean, I woke up, my knee was bent, and I was eating sushi about an hour after I woke up from anesthesia with my little sister.
She's not back, but you can see Michelle again. She's coming.
Absolutely.
After I'm sure up to that point there was a tremendous just months of anxiety, right, and worry.
Of course. I think anyone just putting a time frame of saying like this is the amount of time you have to heal, you always want to get ahead of that. It's like, okay, well, if they say 6 months to a year, let me see where I'm at 5 months. Let me beat that. And that's what I've had in my head. Like, okay, I'm only at 3 months now. So, when those conversations were getting closer and closer, and I was already at the 10-week mark and the 12-week mark and the 13 mark, and I wasn't hitting those goals that were set forth for me, it was very upsetting for me. But this was a chance to just restart.
Okay. In that process, you and Blake reach out to us, and we decide that you're going to have the X10 as part of this recovery, and it comes to your home within a couple days of you being there. And what was the strategy? What was the plan? Why did you reach out, and why did you bring this into the protocol? You're yourself. You made those decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm one of those people that I want to know when I'm put out what kind of surgery is being done. What does it look like? What kind of cut are they like? I want to know. I'm not one of those people that are just like, okay, knock me out and wake me up when everything's over. I want to know exactly what you're doing to my body and why this is being done. So immediately when the MUA conversations had started with the original surgeon, I was Googling and looking up MUA. And I know that it was one sleepless night. My husband was keeping me up snoring. I plugged in headphones into my ears, and I remember very clearly just typing in those words MUA into YouTube. And I think that it was Nancy's story that popped up. And it was an under 3-minute video that really changed my life. And I remember watching it and just really relating to her. And the next day, I completed a form fill, sent it in. And the second that I got a confirmation, I scrolled down and I noticed, I think it was a 917 or 914 number. And I think it was your number.
Mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I hadn't scheduled a call, I think until later that week, but I reached out to you directly and I told you like my situation and how you felt about it, if this was going to help me or not help me. And after we had that conversation, I took that information and I brought it back to my surgeon. And this was the original surgeon. And I told him, I said, look, I have found this machine, if you will. I said, have you heard of it? And he's like, no, I've never heard of it. I said, okay, well, I think it maybe can potentially help me from, needing that MUA. And he was like, no, you need the MUA. You need to break up that scar. The only way that tissue is going to break up is if it was surgically removed. So immediately after that, I was just defeated. I found this. I thought it, was something that the surgeon was going to be excited about, and it was met with like just being dismissed. And had I really listened to my gut at that point and reached out, earlier, not earlier, but had I just said, you know what, let me try this. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. What do I have to lose at this point? But I didn't. And it was when the conversation became very real with the second surgeon that I had asked him about it as well. And rather than him being dismissive of it, he said, no, I've never heard of it, but you should try it. And those words were just ingrained into my head. And I told my husband, I said, I'm going to try it. So we looked into it, if it was the cost that made sense for us, and how we could make this work within, the budget allotted, because this is not something that goes through insurance. And we decided that, it is something that is really going to give me the best shot at recovery. So when I did get home from the MUA, my coach was here probably 2 hours after, and I started on it immediately.
Well, I'm really glad you did, and I know you are too. It's just more credit to you, Michelle, honestly, because it's, you heard no, and you heard no from really learned, educated experts in their field, and you heard a maybe from one, and you jumped on that. And it takes that sometimes, because we hear a lot of surgeons don't know who we are still, and that's one of our missions. And this podcast and all the other things we do will help that, and the new research that we have and our meetings with Medicare and all these things that are happening will eventually win the day for us. But right now we're still in those early stages, and it takes people like you who are willing to follow their instincts and in our conversation, and we had to talk about it. And whenever I'm in those situations, I'm trying to be as honest and even-handed, and I like to consult as much as I possibly can and provide. Sometimes patients want to speak with other patients, or they want to speak with our clinicians, or we need to send information to the surgeon, whatever it takes to introduce this to people that don't know about us. And we've worked with all kinds of HSS surgeons, but we've never met with a lot of them. We've worked with their patients, so we have a long way to go to introduce this to that hospital and those folks there. So yeah. Well done. So there you are. Well, wait a minute. Before we get you on the machine and doing recovery, what kind of range of motion were you seeing in those couple days in the hospital right after the procedure?
I mean, immediately after the procedure, they had said, keep your leg straight. And in my head, I'm like, absolutely not. I haven't bent my leg in 3 months. I need to see if this works. And I looked down and there was my knee closer to my eyes and face than it had been in 90 plus days. And I was just amazed. And my sister snapped a picture of me literally with my knee bent, with sushi in my hand, just smiling and looking down like in amazement that, oh my God, this is actually happening. And
I want to see that
then
picture.
the next day, I will happily send that to you.
Please.
The next day, the surgeon came in and I was at 110, and he was just astounded and so happy by this. And I really think it was due to the pain control. And I hadn't started physical therapy at that point. I was just in bed, moving around as much as I could, getting up and walking around, but I was not doing any sort of physical therapy. And again, just having two different surgeons whose ideas varied greatly. The first surgeon had told me that, you're going to have this manipulation. The next day, you are in physical therapy. It's going to be painful. You're going to push through it. I don't care. Those were his exact words. I kid you not. I don't care. You will push through it. And when I told my surgeon who ended up doing the MUA this, he was like, absolutely not. He's like, you cannot do physical therapy immediately after, like maybe a day or two, maybe like 2 days-ish, but it really depends on how you feel. Because if you're pushing yourself through it and then you're in pain again, you're setting yourself back. I mean, are you going to be completely pain-free after this? Absolutely not. But you do have to have a little bit of downtime. You can't go from having like a second major procedure to straight back to physical therapy. There has to be a little bit of downtime. And I really understood that and respected that mindset.
Now, usually you can see some pretty good numbers. There are some nerve blocks involved. You've just had the surgery. They're managing your pain well. And usually there's a step back from the number, the 110 that you had in the hospital.
Right.
A few days later, what was the trajectory for you once you got home and you're sort of finding where you were?
I want to say when I woke up, I think it was on day 2 before I left the hospital. When I got up that initial morning, I felt a surge of pain, and I immediately got very upset and emotional that, oh my God, this didn't work. Like, what's going on? And I remembered that them saying that, this may be taking a couple steps back in order to take a couple steps forward. And I just kept reminding myself of that. And I remember that when my coach, Todd, had dropped off the machine, I got on it and I could only get to 58. And I'm like, what's going on? Yesterday I was at 110. Like, what's happening? The magic is gone. What's going on? And he explains to me that, no, it's not gone. You have to work at it. It is there. And something interesting that I had the surgeon do that I don't think anyone else who's been in my shoes did. I actually requested that they videotape the surgery, not the entire surgery. But I wanted to physically have that reminder that your knee does bend back as far as your anatomy allows it to. And so on that days when I was feeling a little bit defeated or in more pain, I would watch that. And it was only 10 seconds. And immediately it just reminded me in a snap second, like, you can do this. You've done it before. Your knee knows how to do it. You push through it. And that's just been the best reminder for me. And for me, there was no other option. And the fact that the manipulation did work, it wasn't a painful procedure for me. And that it got me to the point of, where I'm at now, is really the best thing that could have happened.
Did anyone set expectations for you? Did 110 was that a number that meant anything to your surgeon or anyone else, or in terms of where you could end up? Were they no holds barred? You can get to 120, 130. Was that laid forth for you
He
at all?
he he when he showed me the video, when he came to see me the first time, I was just in shock. And he told me, he said that the moment that I removed the scar tissue, your knee bent back without any push at all. And I can see that in the video itself, that there was no force. It wasn't like he was cranking on me like I was seeing on the YouTube videos. It naturally just glided back on its own, like it was light as a feather.
Wow. Wow. So clearing the decks, like let's go for this. You're going to be able to get to full or much farther
Full,
along,
yeah,
et cetera.
full.
Full.
But he
Yeah.
never said 130, 140, 110, 115. He never gave a number. He just said, I got you fully back to complete a
Hmm.
flexion. But he never said what that was. So I
What that
think
number was, yeah.
that was helpful for me.
Yeah.
But I told my husband a couple times, I said, you know what, I accept maybe I'm not going to get back my full flexion. And he
Mhm.
didn't say anything because I think he thought I was crazy at that point, and that of course that I would. I was only a couple days out of surgery. But I think in my head I had accepted, like, maybe I won't get this fully back, and that's just what the effects of this unfortunate accident will be. But then I got to the point where I was like, no, that's not true. This video shows that my leg does go all the way back. So why would I put it in my head that I can't get back to that point?
Right.
So every day, the first thing in the morning that I would do is jump on the X10. And I would start out, I think originally it was set to 68 was the resting number, and it would very quickly increase that throughout my time on it. I started doing 45-minute sessions 3 times a day, and then I cut that to 35-minute sessions 4 times a day.
Interesting. And I say interesting because we have, you start out with what we kind of recommend, 3 sessions a day if you're seeing swelling, icing, and elevation in between. But a lot of people find their own way, and obviously you did as well, adding that 4th session. Was that 4th session sort of a late night session that you added, would you call it?
No,
No?
I mean, I guess the baby goes to sleep around 7:30, 8 o'clock. So anything after that is, I
Okay.
guess, late night.
Hmm.
But typically, you would do it anywhere from maybe 8 to 10 o'clock. It would just
Okay.
depend how I was feeling. And I
And
would,
why did you do that? Why did you add that 4th, shorter but more frequent sessions?
because if you're just laying in bed and watching TV for 5-6 hours before you're going to bed, and then you're sleeping for 8 or 9 on a good night, you're tightening up again. And I found that when I added in that extra session, I wasn't waking up as tense and as tight, and that I was quickly increasing the number in the morning quicker than
Mhm.
I would if I hadn't added in that additional session.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard this before, and it indeed is, minimizing that time in between sessions because that is the longest break you're going to get overnight, and
Right.
sleeping can be uncomfortable, and for a lot of people, and it's it's a long time. So it totally makes sense to me, and that's great that you got to that point. So what happens now? It's 68 degrees as a starting position, so that's a bit of a jump right there. And how did it? You're doing these 4 sessions, 7 days a week. You're also doing physical therapy along with this.
Correct. Yeah, I think that although the X10 is great, I don't think that it should replace what a physical therapist can do. I think
Right.
that it should work in tandem with the physical therapy. So on the days that I did have the physical therapy, I would do it once or twice instead of doing it 3 or 4 times. I would always do it before going to physical therapy and then later on that night. I would never do it immediately after getting home from physical therapy. But for
Right.
me, that's what works. I think it's something that you have to figure out for yourself.
Right.
I
Well,
don't think that
clearly,
there's any kind of
yeah.
secret potion with it.
No, there isn't. You're absolutely right. With all that we know and our coaches and everything else, it is every patient is a unique situation. And so there you are, you're working on this thing. It's 4 days, it's 5 days, it's a week. What kind of progress? You don't have your chart, do you? Your
I
log? Oh, you
do,
do.
yeah,
Whew. All
I
right.
do. It's in front of me.
What do you
I'm all
see
set.
there in your logbook? You're ready for this call?
Yeah, so I had started at 58 when Todd dropped it off.
Okay.
I was increasing by anywhere from 2 to 4 degrees a day.
Oh, wow. And that's pretty steady. Do you just see it just day after day?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So just
Yeah.
reading numbers, it was going from 58 to 60 to 63 to 64 to 68 to 70, 73, 76, 77, 80, 84, 90, and just kept jumping and jumping. And then when I ran out of space on the paper, I just started taking screenshots on my phone so I could
Mm.
keep track of it that way.
And how far did you get?
Last week I hit 120, and I remember screenshotting it and sending that to Todd, and I was just so proud and so happy, but didn't believe it. And when I went to physical therapy the next day, the first thing that I said before we did any stretching, any warming up, applying any heat or anything, I said, I want you to measure right now. And that's the number that I hit. And I was just in shock because I thought like, well, that can't be possible. Like this number is staring back at me, but that's not real. But when it was verbally told to me by someone who I trusted and have been working with for a couple of weeks, it was just wow. It was that wow moment for me.
Well, let me full disclosure and be completely honest here. That's always a relief for us also as well, because sometimes it takes 35 minutes, 40 minutes to get to a 120, and there you are cold in PT. Boom, measure me. That's a different scenario, and I would not have been surprised if you were 5 or 10 degrees away from that number cold. But I'm delighted that you achieved that, in that circumstance as well. And everybody's slightly, you can skew X10 numbers if you move rollers around and stuff, and every PT might have a slightly different way of getting that measurement. So a few degrees isn't a crisis. But I was really happy to hear that when I did understand that you were getting the same readings, because sometimes, and that's one of the things with a machine like the X10 is that, it's designed to give you, that opportunity to get to a great number. The question then becomes, can you hold it? Can you maintain that number? And the machine is leaving your home very soon. That's going to be your challenge. I mean, let me understand this. It's been a week since that measurement or so. Are you continuing to use it right now, or are you starting to wean yourself off of it?
Yeah, I actually hit 130 earlier this week.
Oh, the story continues. So you got to 130. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. That's amazing. I didn't actually know that
And
fact.
that number was further confirmed when I went to the surgeon the following day, and they don't use any sort of measurement other than their eyes. And he said, absolutely, you're at a 130. And I was like, what?
I didn't know how good
And
this story was.
yeah,
Wow.
that's just sitting on the edge of their table and
Yeah.
using your other leg and then pushing it back with the surgical leg.
Right.
And
Right.
it went all the way back.
Oh my goodness. That's huge. That's really just in time for good weather. I'm looking outside and there's sun out there and it's beckoning. Michelle, come
Yeah.
join the rest of us. Wow.
The timing couldn't be more perfect. This machine gave me my life back. That's the only way I can describe it. And
Well,
6 words,
okay.
it gave me my life back.
I'll take that, but I think you got your life back, and I'm so completely happy that we were part of that process. And I'm sure the X10 gets lots of good credit here, but you got your life back. You went to PT. You added the 4th session with your coach. I mean, come on. Again, this is a little bit of a testament to your stick-to-itiveness and willpower.
Agreed,
Uh,
agreed. You definitely have to be disciplined. I mean, even on days like this where it was the weekend, I had to make the sacrifice and, have my husband go out with the baby for the walks and that time that we would normally spend together. And I had to dedicate that to just my health and putting myself first and knowing that, better days are ahead, but I need to focus on this now. And had I not done that and had I not had this machine, I think that I wouldn't be in the place that I'm at now. So I do credit a lot
yeah,
to the X10, but of course it was me that was on it. And I think the best part of it is that you're the one in the driver's seat. It's not someone that's saying, bend, pull your leg this way, you do this exercise. It's you who's physically choosing to flip on that switch, sit down, and put in the work that you need to do. And, it's fun. It's within 30, 40 minutes, it's done and it's over, and you can go on about your life if you need. Even if you only have 20 minutes, in between doing whatever you're doing, you have to make that time for it. You have to make that a priority, and that is the reason why I'm where I am, because I made my health my priority.
yeah. There's a thing you just mentioned, and I'm not going to jump on it, although I want to, the word fun, because it's therapy and it's work, but there's a little bit of a gamification. You've got some numbers to shoot for and goals and a history, and you're tracking yourself through that. But the one thing that I do think is it's a little point maybe on the surface, but I think it's a big point, is that it's in your home and you're living with it and it's sitting right there looking at you. For some, they need that motivation. You don't need that motivation, but you also have access to this wonderful tool right then and there. There's no travel to the clinic and all those aspects of just getting around New York City. It's right there in your house and
Exactly.
available, and boom, you can use it. And in your case, there's no way, Michelle, you could have recreated this experience with outside therapy. It had to be in your home to do the kind of work that you did, really, 4 times a day and all that. So
Absolutely. And
I love that about
again, this isn't something that should replace the
right.
combination of good physical therapy as well as doing stretches on your own, because the machine itself, can only take you so far. You have to put in that additional work.
Well, let's talk about that just for a second, because I love that, and I have my little pitter patter of answers when it comes to what do you get from physical therapy in terms of gait training, heel to toe balance, stability. But what was it at PT that was so helpful, apart from obviously the X10 in your house?
I think the pressure was gone. I could really relax, and knowing that whatever it is that they were going to do, that I was going to work with them and not against them. That the pain, yes, it was there on the surface, but I was able to push through it. And the pain was, not nearly as bad as originally when that it started. And I do want to say that, of course, I was on that pain medication, but I was off it a lot quicker because I was able to push through that and felt that I could overcome those physical pains with that extra stretch, that extra session. Like every time I would get off the X10, I would quickly do a squat to make sure that this was still as loose as it felt that it was, that it wasn't just in my head, that I was hitting those numbers, and that I was able to bend in the way that I needed to, that I was able to play with the baby on the floor and then get up if I needed to, chase after him. Well, not chase after him, but at least get up off the floor and go to him when I needed to, versus, it just being that much more challenging to just do everything, getting in and out of a car, getting from the couch, just standing up from a chair. Those are things that, obviously you take for granted before because it's just an innate thing. But when you are not able to physically do it without a challenge, it makes life just that much more harder.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you also, you were in charge of the therapy. You had access to it, and you ended up using it for, about 2 hours a day, on most days at least, it sounds like. And the volume, the amount of time that your knee was finding those terminal flexion points, that whatever that was, 115, 117, 120, you were getting all kinds of time for your body to sink into that number, make it more and more comfortable just by sure seconds of time, minutes of time, hours of time, and your body sort of accepted it, I think, in the end, through and then at PT, I guess part of my question for the PT aspect of this is, what were they doing there that you felt was really beneficial and complementary to that a volume of bending that you were doing on the X10?
I think that just them getting out those extra kinks that I wasn't able to, them seeing, well, your hamstring is tight today, or your quads are waking up before when they were totally just sleeping. And just seeing those gains every day and every week is what gave me the motivation to just push through. I'm not saying physical therapy has not been challenging
Right.
post the manipulation. It certainly has, but it's just gotten easier. Again, with just having that willpower to know that I could power through it.
I like having the brilliant. I mean, you shopped PTs and you ended up with a group that you really like and people you really trusted and believed in. But I love having those trusted voices frequently working with you to validate, yes, these are real gains. Here's what we need to focus on. Like you mentioned, quad or hamstring. Another opinion. I mean, the X10 is a machine. It's not going to give you too many opinions, and your coach is working
No.
with you on that device. But now you've got experts also volunteering input and guidance that makes it a really well-rounded recovery, I think.
Yeah, and I think they're just astonished about the level of achievement that I've had in just a short period of time. I'm only, I think, 5 weeks post-op, and I've gone from 4850 to 130.
Yeah, amazing. Well, okay, we've covered this from a few different perspectives. Is there anything else? Imagine there's an awesome mom on the Upper West Side, and she just fell, and she's all bent out of shape and upset and mad and frustrated. And I mean, what do you tell that person? Is there anything else to share about your recovery?
Just try it. I mean, yes, you should listen to your doctor, but you should really listen to your gut and do that extra research and take your health into your own hands and know that, there are better days ahead. Yes, it sucks and it's horrible right now. And I remember that my mother-in-law kept reminding me, like, better days are ahead. It's going to get better. And it's easy for someone to say that, who's able to run around and have their normal life and nothing has changed for them. But when you're hearing it from someone who has been there, I think it's just different. I actually, when I see people on the street, my husband and I had said that, like, we're just more aware of seeing someone who's on crutches or seeing someone who has a brace and wanting to tell them about this. And I do, regardless of if I'm crazy or not, I will go up to someone and tell them, this is my experience. This is my journey. This is what I've used, and this is the contact information. It's up to them. I can't force them to want to make that call or want to believe that, I'm a walking testimonial of that this does work and that it can work. It's up to that person to decide that, maybe this is something that will work for them.
Well said. Well, Michelle, thank you. Thanks for the time. I really, really value your contribution. We do not have a lot of interviews with people that have gone through what you've gone through. We have a few, but the more that we do this, and I know that thousands of people are going to hear this eventually, and they're all going to benefit from your willpower and your story. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I hope so, because if just one person who believes anything that I'm saying and believes that, that this can help them, then I feel that I've done my duty, if you want to call it that. I did want to add that
Yeah.
from my original surgery, I was sent home with a CPM machine. And
Oh.
that thing is terrible, is painful. It does not work. It's proven that it doesn't work, and yet doctors will still continue to prescribe it and send that out. And I just wish that they knew that there was an alternative. And that's why I am such an evangelist for this. And I want more doctors and more people to be aware that, okay, yes, there is a CPM. It's old, it's antiquated. It's something that's been used for years. And maybe it does work for some people. I can't say that it doesn't work for everyone, but I can say that it did not work for me and that the X10 did.
Boy, I spend a lot of time saying those words, and it's great to hear from you. But thank you for that, because that's exactly, I'm on a mission, we're on a mission. I feel like this is almost a vocation, which is what I do every day. Whether it's something like what you and I are doing in an interview, or the blogging that we do, or the research that we do. I mean, it's all to improve people's recoveries. And the fact is, the CPM is in the way of a lot of people's recoveries, and they don't know it. And I feel like every week, every couple of weeks, I need to shout a little bit about the fact that it is not a tool. Even if the X10 isn't going to be the solution for that patient, it might be for circumstance and geography and our growth and our size or whatever, that they can't get on the X10. But I do know that the CPM is not going to be the answer. And thanks for that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was told that I should use that 8 hours a day in increments of like 2 hours. And who wants to sit shackled to a bed, with something that's forcefully flexing their knee in a way that it's not even helpful? Certainly not me. I'd rather jump on a machine for 45 minutes or 30 minutes, 3 or 4 times a day, and then go about my life. And, with the numbers back in your face, and you can see, okay, I'm at 80, I'm at 90, I'm at 100. I'm going to get to 110 tomorrow. I'm going to get to 120 by the end of the week. Like, you have to set these goals, but with the CPM, you have no idea what you're at. You have no idea. It says one number, and then that wasn't matching up. And that's why I was so adamant about wanting to match up the numbers that I was seeing with X10 with the physical therapy, because with the CPM, I was reaching numbers like 75, 80, and I would go to physical therapy, and they're like, sweetheart, you're at 45 or maybe 50. And I was just like dumbfounded. Why was there such a level of discrepancy that wasn't making sense to me?
And that's it. My conversation with Michelle. I am so glad you got all the way to the end. She's a great person, isn't she? What a terrific lady, and I'm just really delighted that she's getting back to her life just in time for some good weather. Thanks for listening to the Bee's Knees podcast. We've got a lot to share coming up, many, many interesting episodes with patients and clinicians, and continuing our series of threats to a proper knee replacement recovery. So I'm glad you're on board for this exploration that we're doing on an ongoing basis, and look forward to seeing you next time.
To learn more, visit x10therapy.com, 1-855-910-5633. Just a reminder, it's a huge help if you subscribe to, rate, and review our podcast. It helps people find us.
X10, back to full strength.